Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06 on O'Connor and Company. A very busy Wednesday morning as we still digest the primary results from Maryland. After spending millions of dollars failing to purchase the 8th congressional district back in the day, David Trone then spent millions of dollars successfully purchasing the 6th congressional district of Maryland. And now yesterday he spent, $70-80 million to fail to purchase the Senate nomination. I want to reiterate to Mr. Trone that for just $20 million, he can purchase one of the empty chairs on this program. We'd love to have him. He'll be sort of that drunk, semi-racist guy that says inappropriate things now and again.
Can we split it?
It'll go into the pool.
Okay, fine.
We'll all get our share.
The tip
But there
jar.
are many more seats that you could purchase, Mr. Trone, including one on O'Connor and Company. We're like Democrats. We have no shame. It's
right.
yours for the taking. Well, for the buying. Why not? Why not? Stranger things have happened. Coming up at 8:35, comedian Rob Schneider will join us. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. And look who's here, Julie.
I know.
Hey.
Friend of this program, friend of parents and children everywhere, friend of education. Corey DeAngelis with his brand new book, The Parent Revolution. And it's good that you come here because we're sort of the epicenter of the parent revolution. Corey, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
You're not a D.C. guy. I mean, you're connected to D.C., but you don't actually live here. You're visiting on the book tour, right?
That's right. I actually used to live in D.C. for like 6 years when I was working at think tanks, and I figured I might as well move back to the land of the free. I'm in Texas now. And yeah, I swung by for a couple of events, one at the Heritage Foundation. It's the official launch event at 11 a.m. Eastern today at the Heritage Foundation in D.C., and then later tonight, I'll be at the Capitol Club with Independent Women's Forum. So I'm super excited to be here.
Well, tell me about the book. Obviously, we have tracked you. We have you on a lot to talk about successes you have on a state-by-state basis to push for school choice and to finally free parents and their children from the shackles of the teachers' union and the organized effort to indoctrinate children. What is this book? Is this book sort of a chronicle of what has happened, or is it also tools for parents to sort of do this in their own home?
It's both, yeah. So it's a story of optimism and talks about the darkness at first when the teachers' unions overplayed their hand during COVID, fought to keep the schools closed as long as possible. They were holding children's education hostage. They engaged in fear-mongering every step of the way. They were using fake body bags outside of the offices in D.C. for the public school system to protest going back to work. You had them deleting tweets in places like Chicago claiming that, quote, the push to reopen schools is rooted in sexism, racism, and misogyny. They threw every buzzword at the wall to see what would stick, but their plan backfired. Although they did get $190 billion in so-called COVID relief and ransom payments from the taxpayer, their plan backfired because families got to see what was happening in the classroom. And as Vodi Bakum said, we cannot continue to send our children to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans. Well, guess what, Larry and Julie? The good news is parents aren't surprised anymore. They've woken up. They're never going back to sleep. And we now have a red state parent revolution in particular. And I talk about how we could expand school choice to blue states as well in the book, and then also things you can do to tweak the public school system, even if it isn't full-throated school choice. What are some reforms that we could champion to allow families to have more freedom and more of a say in their kids' education? I talk a lot about the Virginia story, too, with Mr. Terry. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach McAuliffe. It showed... Glenn Youngkin really showed the GOP how to pick up the football and become the parents' party by winning on the issue of education in that race by 6 points with education voters. And as your listeners know, that was the number 2 issue in the election. And so that should give people hope in other areas of the country, too. I also talk about how some Democrats have started to come along on the issue of school choice, even though they have been historically a wholly owned subsidiary of the teachers union, because Randy Weingarten, who I dedicate the book to, I also posted a tweet.
Sent her a copy.
Sent her a copy of it. With people made fun of me because the handwriting wasn't really great, but you can't really blame me. I went to government schools, And I can't use the doctor of defense either. I am a doctor, but I'm not a real doctor.
You're Jill.
I'm more like a Jill Biden doctor.
I love that. I love it. Listen, let me follow on that a little bit. You talk about, the GOP. Did they appropriately seize this moment? I worry personally that the memories of COVID and just how outrageous the teachers' unions were, and frankly, the public schools were, and I mean, not all public schools. It really happened in some private schools as well, which is, again, why school choice is so important. But do you think that memory is fading? And again, second part, do you think the GOP really did all they could, or could they have done more?
I don't think the memory is fading because parents care about their kids more than anybody else. And they're never going to unsee what they saw in 2020. Yes, the schools are open, but the problems are still there. And so, yes, it's true that families saw through remote learning, which, hey, let's be real. It should really be called remotely learning because there wasn't a lot of learning going on. But families saw what was happening with critical race theory and gender ideology, and they saw that their kids were being indoctrinated and not educated. They want the basics. They want math, reading, and writing. And so I think that fire is still lit under the belly of parents. And when it comes to the GOP picking up the opportunity, it depends on the state, right? Depends on where you're at. And a lot of it has become a GOP litmus test issue in some states to support school choice. Look at the elections from my home state in Texas. 10 of the 13 candidates that we targeted for voting against school choice on the Republican side in the primaries lost their elections outright, or they were forced into runoffs, most of those guys in second place into the runoffs. So that translated to a 77% win rate against anti-school choice incumbents in the Texas House, which basically never happens. Incumbents usually win 95% of the time. So the voters are holding them to that moniker, whether the politicians want to be the parents' party or not. The Republican primary voters are holding them to it at the ballot box. And I think that's what's important in the parent revolution is that it shows that when parents lock arms and band together, they can become an interest group in a way that's even more powerful than the teachers' unions because, again, they care about their kids more and they outnumber the employees in the system.
Our guest is Corey DeAngelis, and his book out today is The Parent Revolution. He's a senior fellow at American Federation for Children and executive director of the American Federation for Children. It's the same one, executive director. So you're senior fellow and an executive director.
Executive director at EFI, Educational Freedom Institute.
Thank you.
I have too many titles. I can't blame you for forgetting them.
Your business card is like a freaking phone book.
So DC.
Corey, the thought process after we saw all this coming down, and I'm only half jokingly say that this is the epicenter of the parent revolution because I do think Loudoun County, Virginia sort of was like Lexington and Concord, that was the shot heard around the world and suddenly everyone started looking at their own school systems. The initial thought was, well, we need to run for school board. We need to be the people on that dais. We need to be, but it goes much deeper than that. School choice ultimately is the only solution because without competition, the powers that be will still have the power so that they can be the powers that be.
Right, and look what happened during the pandemic when families wanted to push back at the school board meetings. There was this fairy tale model of democratic accountability that if you just showed up and talked to them, they would actually listen to you. That didn't happen, and we saw that right before our very eyes. What else happened? Well, they cut off their mics because families weren't happy with the content in the classroom, and they labeled parents as domestic terrorists for having the audacity to show up and have a say in their kids' education. I mean, it's totally ridiculous. And they even sent a letter to the Biden administration implying that some families under the Patriot Act should be investigated for domestic terrorism. Yeah. I mean, so what my point here is that if you had school choice, if families can vote with their feet, well, then the school boards would view them as a customer as opposed to a nuisance, as opposed to an evil person. And then they start to listen to parents. They would view them as a partner. And so with school choice, competition is a rising tide that lifts all boats. It gives the school board and school officials an incentive to do a better job and listen to families as opposed to trying to bully and silence them into submission. But again, the good news is when you had that letter go out by the NSBA, the School Boards Association, 26 states have already left or pulled their funding from the NSBA. So they basically imploded. It's their own fault. They've overplayed their hand. And again, it shows that parents can become a political juggernaut if they are organized because they have so much power in numbers and just the veracity to fight for their kids.
Well, and of course, Corey's going to stick with us here. He's in studio with us, and we're going to have a bit of a lightning round here, because there's conservative Republicans who don't get it about school choice. They still sort of don't understand exactly how this would work, and they still believe some of the objections to school choice. And we want to hit those, dead on, right between the eyes. So, Corey, get ready. We're going to throw all the objections to you, and you're going to bat them away, and then we're going to win the day here with school choice. Corey DeAngelis in studio with us. But first, though, it's 7:16. Corey DeAngelis, his book is The Parent Revolution. You should get it to learn what happened, starting right here in Loudoun County, Virginia, about what's happened all across the country. The sad thing is, despite the fact that Lexington and Concord and that shout heard around the world was here in Loudoun, Virginia is falling behind a little bit compared to other states.
Yep.
Other states have been more effective in actually moving towards school choice, thanks to the efforts of Corey DeAngelis and his organizations, the Educational Freedom Institute and the American Federation for Children. So Corey, what's the number one objection you hear, even from Republicans, when you go into their offices in South Carolina or Florida or what have you, and they say, listen, I'd love to back this, but here's my problem. What is their problem?
They use the same arguments that the Democrats use. So, I mean, these are the same guys that are usually endorsed by the unions, too. They're rhinos. They're not real Republicans. But the main argument they'll try to have their cake and eat it, too, to try to pretend they're still Republicans while voting against their own party platform, is they'll say, well, I'm in a rural area, and because I'm in a rural area, I don't have to vote for this, and I can vote with all the Democrats. And the logic behind it, the supposed logic, is they'll say, look, I don't have a lot of private schools in my area, or they'll even say the public school is the only option.
Right.
But in the next breath, with a straight face, they'll try to look you in the eyes and tell you that, well, this is going to defund my public school. It's so fantastic in my rural area. Well, one, if it's so fantastic, you should have nothing to worry about. But two, if it's true there are no exit options, you should be the last person arguing this is going to defund your school. And by the way, the money doesn't belong to the government school anyway. It belongs to the families. They should be able to take it to the school that works best for them, whether that's public or private.
How much of it, too, is wanting support from the teachers' unions? And this goes to my second question. How are the teachers' unions still as powerful, say, as they were in 2020?
I mean, they're losing even some Democrats. So, no, they're not as powerful as they used to be. But they do still funnel all of their money to Democrat campaign coffers. You look at Randy Weingarten's union, the American Federation of Teachers. She's the school closer that was the campaign closer for Terry McAuliffe here in Virginia.
Yeah, I remember.
She, if you look at Open Secret's website, you can look at their donations. 99.97% of the campaign contributions from Randy's union went to Democrats in 2022. It's been like that for decades. It's a complex money laundering scheme. It ought to be illegal. But we have some Democrats defecting on the issue towards school choice. Look at Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. He even went on Fox News last year reiterating his support for school choice. And even during his election in 2022, he quietly changed his education platform, even though he was up by double digits in the polls, to include private school choice, because his Republican opponent started calling him a hypocrite on school choice because Josh Shapiro went to private school, sent his kids to private school. But a lot of people have said, well, maybe Josh Shapiro didn't really believe that. Maybe it wasn't a true change of heart. And my point is something that Milton Friedman once famously said. He said something along the lines of, the way that you change things is not about getting the right people into office. The way that you really change things is by creating a climate of public opinion where it becomes politically profitable for the wrong people to do the right thing. And so as I lay out in the book, the more that the GOP leans into parental rights as a political winner, the more it becomes politically disastrous for Democrats to oppose it. So much that even in Louisiana, they passed universal school choice through their House by a vote of 72 to 32, no problem. Supermajority support, didn't need a single Democrat. Yet still, 20% of their House Democrats voted for the bill in Louisiana. So that's showing that the political winds are shifting towards education freedom. I don't care the reason, whether they have a true change of heart or they're reading the tea leaves. At the end of the day, that's good news for families that politicians from both parties are feeling compelled to at least publicly support school choice. They're maneuvering against each other to compete to be the candidate who supports education freedom. That's not happening everywhere, but it's happening more than it was a few years ago.
All right, Corey, a couple more real fast. School choice will drain money from the public system, and it doesn't have enough money as it is.
The money doesn't belong to the government schools. They have tons of money. According to NCES, they spend about $20,000 per student per year, and that number has increased by about 170% after adjusting for inflation since 1970. It doesn't go into the classroom. It's wasted. It should go to the families so that the monopoly listens to those parents as opposed to labeling them as evil people.
And I'm sorry, really quickly on that, and as enrollment has gone down in these public schools, the funding still continues to go up. Isn't that correct?
Exactly. It's a jobs program for adults as opposed to an education initiative for kids. And the libertarian argument. This money will then go to religious schools, and there should be separation of church and state. The real solution is to get government money completely out of education. I mean, take the win, take the W, or else you're going to be stuck with the L. And the words separation of church and state aren't in the Constitution. They're talking about the Establishment Clause, and school choice is not a violation of that clause. We have tons of Supreme Court precedent for the same reason that Pell Grants don't violate the Establishment Clause. It doesn't establish a state religion just because you get to choose your school. It's a ridiculous argument. And look, you can take vouchers in the form of Medicaid to private religious hospitals if you want. You can do that with Pell Grants for college, pre-K programs. You can take it to religious pre-Ks, and so on and so forth. It's only when it comes to K-12 education is this argument brought up, and it's, again, because the monopoly is threatened by choice, and so they just throw anything at the wall to see what would stick. The reality is there is no good argument against giving the money to the families. It's meant for their children. They should be able to have the money follow the child. And so, look, if you want to get government out of education, this is a step in the right direction. I'll let you fight that all day. Introduce a bill to reduce it even further. We'll see how successful you are, but school choice is the most feasible option we have. You
were the first one I heard that made the argument, let the money follow the child instead of going right to the school. And it makes perfectly logical sense. It's a great way to describe what school choice would look like. It works. It's going to work as every state takes. And guess what? As soon as every state adopts school choice and we have true school choice, there will be no reason for a federal Department of Education, and we will get federal control and money out of this. But we got to get there first. And as usual, the best ideas are always employed here in our backyards, in our neighborhoods, and in our states, not coming from Washington and implemented from the top down. Corey DeAngelis, I wish we had more time, but we don't.
Yep.
But it's great to see you.
Great talking to you.
The Parent Revolution. It answers all those questions and explains how we got here. And it also tells you what you can do to make sure that the Parent Revolution turns into all-out victory and unconditional surrender on the other side. Corey DeAngelis, sir, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37 now. O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here, and thank you to Corey DeAngelis for swinging by here again. His book is called The Parent Revolution. Grab it, read it, buy one for a friend. Coming up, buy one for someone on the school board.
Right.
Coming up at 8:35, comedian Rob Schneider. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning, Julie. How are you? Now that's the OG rocking in the free world, but boy, the denizens of a bar in Kyiv, formerly known as Kiev, were treated to a live cover of that song with none other than Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on lead guitar. That's right. In an unannounced trip to Ukraine to ensure that President Zelensky knows of the undying financial and moral support from the American people, and by that I mean a handful of well-placed politicians in Washington, D.C., he then went to a bar and jammed with a local Ukrainian rock band.
And he was wearing jeans and a black shirt because he's so cool.
Yeah.
It was very cringy.
Which, by the way, for a war-torn country that is facing genocidal demolition, it's cool that he can jam and party with a bunch of people who are drinking it up.
They have
unlimited.
unlimited. They will be funded forever, Larry. So they have a lot of reason to celebrate.
Would have been nice. Imagine if he had gone to, Tel Aviv.
Right.
And showed the undying support of the American. Where we actually do have the majority of Americans who are standing behind that effort there. And again, we're with the people of Ukraine, and we want the good guys to win here. But it's strange to me that there has never been a standalone vote just for Ukrainian aid. For the 2 years that this has been going on Joe Biden and Blinken's watch, they still won't allow one clean bill in front of the representatives of the American people to vote up or down. They always tie it up with something else.
Yeah. I just have a quick thing to add to this. I listened to an interview with the actual band that he played with, and this is hilarious. They were told someone famous was going to come and play with them. They were told it was Neil Young. And can you imagine how excited they were to play with Neil Young?
Gosh.
And then instead they get Blinken. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of a bit of a, bait and switch there.
I got to say, and again, the lack of shame that these people have will never cease to amaze me. Right. I wish that I could be amazed by it, or I wish I was immune to it, but I continue to overestimate their ability to have shame.
The reactions are pretty funny online.
They are funny reactions, but how in his mind, the Secretary of State,
is this appropriate?
How in his mind he thought that this would be a great thing.
I know.
And it was obviously for the cameras. It's not like there's just like a viral video from someone who happened to be there that caught it. No, this was all planned and all staged. And I'm not quite sure what the message is that he's sending to the American taxpayers, to voters, who is this for exactly?
I don't know, but it does not send a message of desperation on the part of the Ukraine, and it doesn't. And it also conveys this message of, boy, the Secretary of State sure has some downtime. World's on fire, but he can get up on stage and rock it out.
Yeah, Monica Crowley made that point, said Secretary of State Blinken jamming in a bar in Kiev while you're forced to cough up tens of billions of dollars that we don't have for the war. However much you despise these people, it's not nearly enough. Meghan McCain, though, I think, I take this personally.
I thought about you and I saw this.
She said, as I've said 100 times before, there are too many failed theater kids, actors, and musicians in politics.
Well, you are not a failed theater kid. So.
Well, and I'm not in politics. I'm in radio. Ned Ryan, this isn't cool. It's the opposite. It's a clown show, a corrupt clown show. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like we keep hearing how they're starving, how they're facing annihilation, how the American people can't abandon them. And then he goes over to deliver the check by hand, I guess. Yeah. Or a briefcase full of gold.
And then they have a party.
And then they're partying.
Yeah. Mark Thiessen went the Kamala Harris route. Just
the FFS.
Yes.
Do the spelling yourself. So while he's doing that, he also delivered some of the strongest criticism of Israel with regard to the war in Gaza. In a pair of TV interviews, Blinken underscored that the United States believes Israel forces should get out of Gaza, which is exactly what the dirtbag pro-Hamas protesters are screaming. But, of course, they want them to get out of the entire region. And
that's right.
I guess a great follow-up would be, Secretary Blinken, we stayed in Iraq for how many? We were in Afghanistan for 2 decades. Yeah. After the 9/11
How long were we in
attacks.
Japan?
Yeah. We're still in Japan.
I know.
We're still in Japan. I know a Marine very near and dear to my heart is heading to Okinawa at the U.S. base in Okinawa. We're still in Japan. But Israel has to get out of Gaza.
Yep.
So that they can go back to building their tunnels and killing their people. We hold Israel we hold Israel to a standard that we don't hold any other country to, and there's only one reason for it, because they're Jewish. And, well, the Democrats have become overtaken. Not your aunt and uncle who vote Democrat, because that's just what they always do. I'm talking about the leadership, the elected officials, the powers behind the party. They have been overtaken by the anti-Semitic hordes that have always been lurking there, that they've given lip service to and to Israel just to keep in power and keep their votes, but they've determined now that they don't need that anymore. This is not your daddy's Democratic Party. It's 7:43.
I don't understand why people are not taking him seriously, because you read about it historically in other countries that they didn't take the people seriously. I think Hitler, Mussolini, they're fools and clowns. Well,
Robert De Niro on The View comparing Trump to Hitler and Mussolini. Well, there's something new.
God.
When is this going to be done? People aren't taking him seriously. They're not taking him seriously. No. Actually, we are. Things suck right now, and this is the man we want. George Stephanopoulos was also on The View yesterday. He was asked by Joy Behar, that leading light of intellectual thought, why do you think Trump is winning? Listen to the answer.
Close right now. I think the polls do show that he's ahead probably in the states that matter the most, largely because President Biden isn't doing as well as he did last time with younger voters and black voters.
Why? Because of what?
Why?
I think there's a lot of reasons for it, but really I think the most important thing that people should understand about this election is how far from normal it is. We have never had a former presidential candidate who was impeached and then indicted for trying to overturn an election.
Enough. Did you notice what he did there? Yeah. I like to shine a light on this because we talk about media and the way they do. George Stephanopoulos. He's everybody's favorite, gay uncle or whatever because he hosts Good Morning America. He's a partisan hack. He was asked specifically, why is Biden not doing well with young voters, black voters? Oh, there's a lot of reasons, but everyone has to know that Trump is dangerous.
That's right.
Right.
It's always pivoting.
They never, so you never hear them say Trump is wrong on the issues. Trump's wrong on the economy. He's wrong on taxes. He's wrong on the border. Trump is wrong on immigration. He's wrong on foreign policy. He's wrong on national security. He's wrong on the military. He's wrong on law and order. They never actually address the issues. The reason that people are saying in the polls right now that they want to vote for Trump over Biden is because of all of those things. And the only answer they have is be afraid of Trump. He's Hitler. And sorry, it doesn't work anymore. It didn't work then, by the way.
There's a lot of things that don't work anymore. There's, cancel culture. It's fading. The DEI programs are going away. We had a lot of upheaval in 2020, much of it because people were insane because of the election of Donald Trump. And then, of course, George Floyd. And then, of course, COVID. So there were some rough years.
And because of the outrageous change of rules that had been put in place to secure elections, and we upended all of those. As the Babylon Bee points out, and they're usually right on, latest polls show Biden will need twice as many fake ballots to win the election this year. It's 7:54.